You know how sometimes an occurrence caught on camera causes the atmosphere in the room to entirely change before anyone has a chance to comprehend it? That's precisely what people are saying about Scrappy, Mendeecees, and Bambi. We're not claiming that any of this actually happened as described, but there are online rumors and discussions that have people quite divided, perplexed, and, to be honest, a bit shaken. Rumors on blogs and fan sites claim that during what was meant to be a typical low-key gathering, things abruptly changed. Tensions rose, voices became louder, and suddenly something happened between Mendeecees and Bambi. It's being referred to as a beautiful crossover moment. Once more, we are only discussing what has been reported. However, if even a small portion of this is accurate, it would explain why Scrappy is currently at the epicenter of all of this mayhem. Because right now it gets intense. According to the same reports, Scrappy did more than simply observe. No, he reportedly responded in an unexpected way. People claim to have had strong emotions. The room seemed like it would blow up in a couple of seconds due to the hostile attitude. Some argue that Scrappy intervened to uphold his moral values, while others contend that this just made things worse. What about Yandy? According to sources, she was present when everything happened, attempting to prevent things from going worse but finding it difficult to manage her emotions when they went out of hand. Fans are taken aback. According to reports, the cast is divided, which has led to a flurry of comments on the internet with everyone posing the same query. What actually took place in that room? Because this is more than just theater. If these claims are even remotely true, relationships and allegiances shift, and everyone involved must deal with the fallout long after the cameras have stopped filming. Even before anything happened, the music in the room seemed heavy. Everyone appeared to be aware that something was off, but nobody wanted to be the first to voice it aloud. In an effort to maintain order, people were chatting and laughing softly. Beneath it all, though, was a subtle tension. Bambi was conversing with a few others across the room. Although she spoke in a composed tone, her body language suggested that she was aware that people were watching her. At first, Mendeecees on the other side appeared at ease, but he would occasionally look across, and those insignificant glances were noticed. The speed at which things allegedly changed has many in disbelief. The chat was informal at first, but when voices began to overlap, the tone became antagonistic. "This doesn't feel right," someone nearby apparently said, immediately before everything changed. Once more, we are merely discussing the viewpoints of others. However, the way these details are presented creates an impression that is difficult to dispute. These sources claim that it began with a remark. Simply put, something went wrong. It wasn't loud or aggressive at first. Bambi turned completely to face males, and her demeanor abruptly changed, her smile disappearing. "What do you mean by that?" she asked in a calm but obviously heavy voice. People pretended not to listen, but they were paying attention to every word, and the room became quieter. Mendeecees continued. He leaned into it, if anything. His answer was severe, bordering on contemptuous. "I said what I said." Feelings were running high at the time. Some claimed you could sense the change, as though someone had crossed a line without realizing how dangerous it was. "No, don't do that," Bambi begged, raising her voice just enough for others to hear. "Make it apparent if you have anything to say," she said, taking one step closer without being confrontational or running. Uncertain of whether to intervene or remain out of it, people in their local proximity started exchanging looks, with some moving closer and others receding. Then came the moment that everyone couldn't stop talking about, and the conversation swiftly became more intense, with voices overlapping and tension gradually building. "Yo, chill," it seems that someone nearby remarked. "This isn't the place." However, by that point, neither of them appeared to be paying attention. Mendeecees reportedly muttered something else, this time more derogatory and scathing. The room seemed to freeze for a moment, as if everyone was waiting to see what would happen next. Scrappy had been watching from across the room when Bambi responded right away, saying, "You're doing too much now," in an unrestrained tone. Fans on the internet claim that this is when things changed, turning the disagreement into something far more substantial. His mood altered as the tension rose and his words became louder. Some said you could feel it in his face. At first, he stood still, trying to make sense of what was happening. Scrappy reportedly responded, "What's going on?" After staring at him for a while, Bambi turned back to Mendeecees, as though she wasn't prepared to let go of the issue just because someone else stepped in. As he got closer, his voice could be heard above the commotion. Scrappy turned to face Mendeecees with a serious attitude. "Now what is this all about?" she continued. "He knows what he did," he replied in a tone that was unwaveringly harsh, and the music seemed to increase the tension simply by stating that. Said, but his voice already had a sharp edge. Mendeecees took a while to reply, which exacerbated the situation. People in the vicinity began to grumble. "Don't bring me into this," nobody said out loud. There were distinct groups in the room, some attempting to diffuse the tension while others obviously anticipated it getting worse. Feelings were running high, but in the end, Mendeecees admitted, if anything, it made the situation worse, due to the way he put it. Scrappy looked more closely. His tone became more acerbic. "Nah, if something went down, we're not just going to act like it didn't," he added. The mood seemed to become entirely antagonistic at that point, and voices began to rise again, this time overlapping and becoming louder. Bambi looked between the two of them and muttered, "This ain't right," which seemed to sum up all that had accumulated during those moments. "This is getting out of control," someone allegedly said. For the first time, it really appeared as though Bambi would hold her ground, clearly unhappy but unwilling to concede. Fans are astounded at how quickly things got out of hand. According to reports, Scrappy's reaction was strong enough to convey that he wasn't happy with what he was witnessing, but it wasn't careless. He said, "We're not doing this," more loudly than before. Nevertheless, it didn't instantly diffuse the situation because at that point respect, perception, and any hidden history were just as important as what was spoken. How a single remark started a full-fledged altercation. Without even knowing it, others in the room seemed to start picking sides. Some moved closer to Bambi to offer encouragement, while others tried to pull Scrappy back and urge him to let it go. It's difficult to control people's reactions when things reach that point. With a tense expression, Yandy, who had been watching everything, finally spoke up, attempting to break through the chaos. She pleaded, "Everyone just calm down," in double quotes, but even she didn't seem sure that anyone would pay attention. If these rumors are anywhere close to being accurate, this was more than just a heated moment, which is precisely why fans are so invested at the moment. It was clear as soon as Yandy moved forward that she was attempting to prevent the entire situation from crumbling in front of everyone. People wanted to believe that the situation could be handled, but it felt like it had already escalated beyond a straightforward argument because the energy and emotions were too intense. She allegedly said, "Enough," in a tense but composed voice. The room had already descended into that perilous state of quiet in which no one is truly at ease and everyone is waiting to see who will say the one thing that will push things too far. This was the kind of incident that creates a lasting impression, altering future perceptions of one another and raising questions about what actually transpired behind the scenes. "Everyone needs to slow down right now," she said, raising her hands as she looked from Scrappy to Mendeecees to Bambi. But the one thing that no one in that room seemed prepared to do was slow down. "Don't tell me to calm down when you weren't the one standing here dealing with that," Bambi allegedly said. And that statement alone changed the atmosphere once again because it wasn't a single exchange and, according to the story being told, she wasn't yelling over everyone to make noise. For a brief moment, it seemed as though people might actually pay attention. Bambi was still clearly upset. There was genuine frustration in her voice, the kind that comes from feeling disrespected in a room full of people who should have known better. "I'm trying to understand why this even got here," he allegedly said, staring directly at Mendeecees. Fans are shocked by how many people claim you could see the anger all over his face. He wasn't moving like someone who came in looking for a fight, but rather like someone who had already decided there was a cue, and in his mind that cue had been because, in my opinion, the entire situation spiraled out of control without any justification. Scrappy said after things got messy, and he appeared to be trying to keep himself together. It was about who felt heard, who felt ignored, and who thought they had the right to control the narrative. However, Mendeecees didn't appear to want to back down from the fight. In fact, the testimony indicate that the more people urged him, the more defensive he became. "Everyone is acting like they know what happened, but none of you were in my head when I said what I said," he stated. That response didn't go down well because the room was already filled with emotion and bewilderment. and people in the area allegedly started reacting under their breaths. And rather than being clear, such kind of comment gave the impression that the speaker was hesitant to take accountability for how their actions were perceived. A woman in the crowd reportedly murmured, "That's not helping at all." To be honest, based on what people are saying about the situation, it wasn't. This is due to the fact that emotions spike again when someone in a heated situation begins to defend the intent rather than address the impact. Bambi folded her arms and shook her head, not so much in shock as in the type of displeasure that indicates she was listening to everything and didn't like it. "See, that's the problem right there," she apparently stated. "You continue to speak as though what you wanted to say was more important than what other people saw." The family was reportedly separated almost immediately after that statement, which seemed to hit harder than everything that had been set up until that point. This division made it more difficult for anyone to defuse the situation. Every whispered side conversation added another layer of tension, every glance across the room was loaded, and every attempt to defuse the situation only seemed to remind people how far it had already gone. Some seemed to agree with Bambi and felt that the room had witnessed the situation go left in real time, while others thought that things were being exaggerated and twisted in the heat of the moment. "Don't give this any more energy, not like this," Yandy allegedly said to Scrappy as she approached him and spoke to him in a hushed voice, warning him not to let the circumstance cause him to become uncharacteristic. But it was evident by Scrappy's response that he was finding it difficult to follow her advice. "When everyone in here acts like this is normal, how am I supposed to maintain composure?" And that question hung in the air because no one could really answer it, he added. Mendeecees apparently laughed without taking sides, not loudly or enthusiastically, but in that fleeting, impatient manner that frequently exacerbates a difficult situation. Scrappy saw right away that it wasn't the kind of response that can come across as dismissive when someone else is clearly unhappy. He allegedly asked, "What's funny?" By the time two individuals in the vicinity went in close enough to maintain a safe distance from one another, the area was entirely enclosed. Mendeecees allegedly said, "Ain't nobody laughing at her." But his voice had become harder and coarser. Everyone knew something unpleasant was approaching and nobody was pretending not to watch. It only made matters worse because Bambi saw it as more proof that he was still not taking the situation seriously. "How quickly this became an entire courtroom is making me giggle." Reports state that she repeated, "A courtroom?" I said, "I didn't like what happened, so now I'm doing too much." And there it was again. The discussion went beyond the original occurrence, and fans on the internet are already claiming that this is why the narrative feels so explosive. It's not just the rumor of a single incident, it's what is said to have happened afterward. "Just take a deep breath and let the emotions subside," someone reportedly said, trying a new strategy and telling everyone to keep their distance for a short while. The reaction, denial, defensiveness, people stepping in, and alliances forging in real time are what turned it from a private altercation into what seems like full-fledged reality TV chaos. However, separation only works when people genuinely want to be apart. According to the stories, Mendeecees wanted people to stop bothering him, Scrappy wanted answers, Bambi wanted recognition, and Yandy was caught in the middle trying to keep things from getting out of hand. Neither side was prepared to let the matter go. This pressure began to show on her face as well. People say she appeared caught between trying to keep the room under control and bearing the weight of what this whole situation could mean once the gossip really got going because, like everyone else in the room, she knew that even if things cooled down in the moment, the fallout was just getting started. Once fans learn that tensions got out of control, blogs start adding their own spin, and people start analyzing every word and every expression. Scrappy reportedly looked around the room and realized that no one was going to give him a straightforward response that felt honest enough. This frustration seemed to settle in his shoulders, as evidenced by the way he clenched his jaw and kept staring at Bambi as if he was debating whether to say more or just remove her from the whole mess. However, before anyone could back down, another voice entered the room from the side. "This didn't start tonight." Those 4 words changed everything because as soon as they landed, people stopped seeing the argument as a single isolated incident and instead saw it as something with layers, grudges, resentments, and built-up tension that may have been simmering long before this night ever got chaotic, the person claimed. Even Mendeecees, who had been deflecting and standing firm, allegedly fell silent for a moment. In situations like that, silence usually says more than shouting ever could. Someone close enough to understand the background and courageous enough to speak up while others were afraid. As they tried to figure out why this didn't start tonight, others in the area started murmuring even more fiercely. Bambi turned swiftly, obviously knowing what that comment meant. Additionally, Scrappy's demeanor changed because he was hearing that there might have been more going on behind the scenes than everyone understood, rather than merely responding to a situation in front of him. Were there long-standing problems with Bambi and later Mendeecees? Had there been a dispute that was never really settled? Had little disrespectful acts gone unreported up until that point? When everyone recognized that this was about history, about things that might have been disregarded or neglected until they could no longer be, and that silence didn't last long, Bambi's countenance altered once more, this time not just frustrated but more concentrated. The proposal was sufficient to change the entire situation, even if no one seemed to know for sure. "So now we're finally saying it," she allegedly said, as though she had been given evidence that the tension was genuine. Her voice echoed across the room, softer but heavier, and people stopped murmuring and began listening once more. Fans are surprised by how people characterize that moment because, for a brief while, it wasn't boisterous or chaotic. According to what's being reported, Mendeecees didn't immediately go in this time. Instead, he glanced around, seemingly considering if it would be worthwhile to open the door or how much he wanted to respond. Rather, Scrappy noted right once that it was silent in a way that felt more intense than anything that had come before. Yet that wait only made the sense of gravity more intense. Who is said to have said, "What does that mean?" in a tone that was sharp and straightforward rather than aggressive. What didn't start this evening? The focus changed once more at that point, and it wasn't just about keeping Bambi safe. It was about figuring out whether there was a more serious problem that had been overlooked. The person who had previously spoken did not rush to explain, which increased the tension even more. People in the vicinity began whispering again, but this time it was conjecture rather than random conversation, and you could practically hear questions being asked out loud. Bambi exhaled slowly, as if she had been holding something inside for some time. "I won't pretend that hasn't changed over time." She said that the family was more divided, according to reports. Everyone was attempting to draw connections between things that may or may not have existed. When Mendeecees did speak again, it was in a different tone that was firm but less defensive and more restrained. "Are you trying to transform something into something it's not?" He apparently gave a slight shake of his head. That sentence alone made some people uncomfortable because when someone says that in a room full of people who have all been playing along, it makes everyone reassess what they've been ignoring. "We won't change everything because of one incident." But things didn't work out as expected. Rather, it appeared as though he was attempting to interrupt a conversation that had already begun to get out of hand. Once more, Scrappy came over with intent rather than hostility. "Nothing is being rewritten," he fired back. "We're trying to understand why it appears to be even more important. Because things typically don't calm down once people stop disputing about what happened and start examining why it happened. It appeared as though the situation had taken a whole other path." According to reports, Yandy moved just far enough between them to prevent a physical altercation or an increase in temperature without getting in the way of anyone. "This isn't improving the situation," she went on in a tense voice,